It might still be cold outside, but the Bay Area housing market, it's heating up. Here's what the data is telling us about what to expect here as we enter a new year in 2025, coming up on this Silicon Valley Snapshot. Welcome back, everyone. It is a new year, same me, and same high-quality Bay Area real estate content where we go over all things data here in the Bay Area housing market. And before we get into the data here, before we get into the numbers, if you're a home buyer in today's marketplace, you're trying to figure out how to make an educated decision when it comes to pricing. How much should I be offering for this home? What are the dynamics of the market that I'm buying in right now, the neighborhood, this specific area that I'm buying in? You can text the word data plus the area or the neighborhood or the zip code that you're buying in, and we will get a data report sent straight to your inbox for that area. And if you're a home seller in today's marketplace, pricing strategy 1000% matters. The way that you price your home in any given area is going to be a little bit different. And so if you're curious on how to properly price your home for your specific area, you can text the word data plus your property address to the number down below. This fall, we were faced with a little bit of a dilemma. Was the market going to rebound here in the early part of 2025, or were we going to see markets similar to the ones that we did in 2019, where the market started off very, very slow heading into the spring season? And I think we have our answer. Over the last 2 months, we have seen some indications that the market is looking like it is going to heat up fairly significantly here at the beginning of 2025. So let's start off with Santa Clara County. Here in Santa Clara County, we had 475 homes active on the market in December and 439 homes pending. We had basically a 1-to-1 absorption rate here in terms of pending sales in Santa Clara County. Now, something to consider, right? You look back last December, and we actually had pending activity outpacing supply. So actually, the market conditions don't look as good as they did heading into 2024 last year, but that can be a little bit deceiving, and I'll explain more once we go through the rest of the areas. Next county up, as we head on up the peninsula, San Mateo County. In San Mateo County, we had 166 homes pending, 227 homes active on the market. Now, clearly, inventory is outpacing demand at this point, and it's outpacing it by a fairly healthy amount. Now, when you compare this to December of last year, the absorption rate is actually better now at the beginning of 2025, heading into 2025, I should say, than things were in December of last year. Let's go to the East Bay. In Contra, Costa County, we have 435 homes pending and 809 homes active on the market. Clearly, the absorption rate there is a lot lower than we saw at this same time last year. So definitely something to pay attention to in the East Bay specifically, where we're seeing Santa Clara County, San Mateo County behave a little bit differently than we are seeing the East Bay behave. Now, these sorts of things tend to fluctuate. We can talk a little bit more about that later on in the video. Now, finally, Alameda County, 416 homes pending, 580 homes active on the market. You compare that to a year ago where we had, a much tighter active inventory to pending sale ratio. This ratio is a little bit looser, so definitely a little bit more on the market than we have demand for at this time in Alameda County, but definitely tighter ratios than Contra Costa County. Okay, so you're looking at this data and you're probably like, Danny, it looks like the market's not going to be as strong as it was last year. Now, to the untrained eye, that could very well be the case. That could very well be the perception. However, when we pay attention to a couple of things, the velocity at which we start the year is usually a pretty good indicator of how these first couple of months are going to be. Now, I'm not saying that 2025 is going to be a record-breaking year for real estate sales here in Santa Clara County, but what I am saying is that these first 90 days are going to be very much a seller's market. For example, here in Santa Clara County, let's compare the active inventory for this first week in January. So for the first week here in January, we're seeing a slight dip in inventory levels. So we have a negative 4.8% dip in inventory levels over the first 7 days compared to the same not 7 days, 8 days here in January versus the first 8 days in January of 2024. In 2024, we had 530 homes active, 557 homes active rather. Now we only have 530. So a very slight dip, but the thing to pay attention to is the pending activity. So look, we're seeing 31% increase in pending activity year over year, month to date. That is indicative of a very strong buyer demand, meaning buyers are out there right now. They're looking for homes. They're not waiting until after Super Bowl Sunday, which can sometimes be the case. Buyers aren't waiting this year. It's very obvious. And so sellers who take advantage of that knowledge, especially here in the first 60 to 90 days, might be better off than the sellers who wait later on in the spring season. This isn't the first time this has happened, by the way. There have been many instances. The one that comes to mind, that is like always comes to mind when I talk about this, is 2018, where the first 3 months of 2018 were incredibly hot, and then boom, April hits and the market goes flat. It flatlines completely. And homes that would have sold in a day or 2 days, or maybe a week in February and March of 2018 took a month, 2 months, 3 months to sell starting in April of that year. Same house, very different market conditions, only 1 month apart. Crazy how that works, but it happens all the time here. And so paying attention to this micro data, right? Little trends that you can spot early on in the year will help you make a better decision. Now, if you're a buyer, what does that mean? Well, you could wait until the spring, and like some buyers, knowing that, like having this knowledge now, might opt to wait until the spring because, hey, there's going to be more options. Clearly, there'll be more opportunity. Active inventory right now is a little bit down. Talking about Santa Clara County specifically, we'll go into the other counties in a second. But at the same time, understand that the next 60 to 90 days, we're going to see a run-up in pricing. Now, how much of a run-up in pricing, that yet is to be determined. But what really matters here, especially for the market that we're in, where the rates have basically stymied price growth, right? Price growth, meaning price surges, right? So we're not seeing the $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 increases in home values every single year, year over year, that we were used to seeing pre-COVID. But what we're seeing right now is a more steady growth. The thing that matters, though, is how much competition are we faced with in these sorts of market conditions. And in the first 30 to 90 days here of 2025, if you're a home buyer, you can expect an incredibly competitive environment. And same thing if you're a home seller. If you're listing here in the first couple of months, you are for sure going to get multiple offers. If you price your home properly and market it correctly, you will most likely get multiple offers, and it will be a very competitive environment. It's a much better environment to sell in as a seller, as opposed to holding it off until later where you're like, hey, maybe the price has gone up a little bit, but now my property is taking 3 months to sell. And if it takes 3 months to sell, a buyer's going to come in and undercut and try and shortchange me. And so I might actually get less than if I had put my home on the market earlier on in the year. I see it happen all the time. I've seen this. I've danced this dance before, everybody. And so I'm not giving you advice that I wouldn't give my family, my sister, my best friends. This is the same advice I'm giving to people that are very near and dear to me. So take it for what it is. This is what the data is telling us right now in real time here in Santa Clara County. Now, in San Mateo County, we're not seeing the same story play out. And so we're seeing in the first 8 days here of 2025, months to date, year over year stats are looking like active inventory is down about 28%. And pending activity is down about 33%. So we saw better conditions going into the first couple weeks here of 2024 than we are seeing right now in 2025. Let's see if it's still a little early, right? If I were shooting this video in late January, I think we'd have a better idea. But these are things that we're going to continue to monitor, and I will continue to bring you updates as the weeks and the months progress. Now, flipping over to Contra Costa County, month to date, year over year, we're seeing fairly neutral trends. So for active inventory, about 25% increase and a 23 to 24% increase here in pending activity. So basically a net neutral, meaning Contra Costa County hasn't changed too much year over year. And so what the market conditions look like here heading into the first 90 days, probably going to be fairly similar to what we saw in the first 90 days of 2024. The difference here in the East Bay is that Alameda County is behaving more similarly to Santa Clara County. We're seeing basically a net neutral month to date, year over year in active inventory, -1.5. So it's a very slight dip in active inventory. Less inventory, usually better for sellers. So very, very slight. This is not it's basically a net wash. But the interesting thing is we're seeing an 11% increase in pending activity. So a little bit more demand and then just a slight little bit less supply. So in terms of where we're at right now, Santa Clara County seems to be the hottest coming out the gate and bucking the trends even more in their favor. So at the beginning of 2024, pendings were outpacing supply, which is a white hot seller's market in Santa Clara County. We're seeing even more of that. We're seeing a greater, more exacerbated version of that here heading into 2025. And what we're seeing here in Alameda County is that relatively speaking, it is behaving a lot more in the seller's favor here heading into the early part of 2025 than we saw in 2024. Now, there's a lot of reasons why this could be and why the market's behaving a little bit better for Alameda County and Santa Clara County. One hypothesis and one thing that I've always talked about here on this channel for the last 10 years is that Santa Clara County is the epicenter. Before Palo Alto was really the epicenter. Palo Alto was the epicenter of everything pre-COVID, but post-COVID, all of that shifted down to Cupertino. Cupertino is now the new Palo Alto. Cupertino is the epicenter for housing trends here in the peninsula and in the greater Bay Area. And so whatever happens in Cupertino, it's a ripple effect outward. And you can kind of loop Los Gatos and Saratoga and maybe Campbell into that, but it's really Cupertino. Cupertino is the epicenter of our market now. And anything that happens in Cupertino radiates outwards. And so what happens? Well, when housing prices get too expensive in Cupertino, people go outside of Cupertino. And so typically, we see this ebb and flow where Cupertino will be white hot, right? And the surrounding areas will be white hot and everything around it will, the buyers are kind of coming in from all over the place and then it gets too expensive and then people go outwards. And so Alameda County is a lot closer and the market there is a lot more similar, especially areas like Fremont. Fremont's very similar to Cupertino from a pricing perspective as well as a school district's perspective. When you go up, Palo Alto is fairly similar in distance from Cupertino, but the housing there is a lot more expensive. And so market to market, we see a lot more similarities in Fremont and Cupertino. Buyers that are buying in Fremont or in Cupertino are a lot more likely to buy in a place like Fremont than they are, say, in Palo Alto. And so we see this ripple effect throughout the Bay Area. And that's been happening now for like the last 5 years where Cupertino has really been that epicenter. Like I said before, it was Palo Alto, but things had gotten so expensive. And then after COVID, hybrid work, work from home, that changed a lot of those dynamics. And so it's very interesting what we're seeing right now in the Bay Area. But what I can promise you is that we're going to keep you up to date every step of the way. So if you're not already subscribed to this channel, what are you waiting for? Click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell to get notified every single time we post a video just like this one to this channel. And we promise to keep you up to date in this ever-evolving, ever-changing Bay Area housing market. This is Danny Gould, everyone. I'm selling Silicon Valley, and I will catch all of you in the next video.